Welcome. I hope you're having a good evening so far. You're here at the Special Education Supports in Secondary School. We hope the presentation is interesting and it provides you with the framework in order to know what supports are available to students in the secondary environment and how to access them if you have need to. There is a closed captioning option and there is a Q&A open. I'm Stephanie King. I'm a learning support consultant with the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, and my partner who will be speaking next is Vicki Holan, also a learning support consultant.
So good evening, everyone. This first slide is just here to help provide a bit of context to our school board's approach to supporting all students in our district. So we believe that everyone can succeed in a culture of high expectations when we're supporting the whole child, ensuring equity when we're working together, and when we're honoring student voice as well. We have up here the document which outlines our special education plan for the district. It's a public document. You can access it on our website. And essentially, it goes over the range of special education supports and services and processes that exist in the board around special education. Again, the goal being to help every student within the district, but specifically we're here tonight about high school. So to help all of our high school students reach their full potential. And we aim to do that in the most inclusive setting possible. With this slide, we are looking at the model that we use to consider the supports and services that we have in the board, and this is what we call the multi-tiered system of supports. So essentially, it all begins at the classroom level. This is the bulk of where learning happens in high school, in any school, but in high school as well. You know, and it all really comes back to what's going on in the classroom. So this is where teachers are getting to know their students. They're building an understanding of students' strengths and needs by direct input, working with students, getting to know them, building relationships, which are super important, but also from documents like IEPs that have come with students, their OSRs, which is essentially the folder that holds all information from their pathway through school. And this is where they're starting to really hone in on the particular needs of students. So that's at the classroom level, the tier 1 level. As teachers begin to recognize that there might be students in need of additional supports beyond what they're able to accommodate in the classroom, then teachers may look to access other supports within the school-based team at the tier 2 level. And this is where we might engage in additional assessments with students around literacy or more generally other educational assessments that can help inform our practice as teachers in the classroom. In some cases, there may be a need to go even higher in terms of this model for supports where we're accessing different folks who would be part of our multidisciplinary team, and Steph's going to talk about what that is in a second. But essentially, this is where we're looking for other input on how to best support a student within our classes. Ultimately, it all comes back down to the classroom. So all of these layers come right back to the classroom where we are looking to support students in really reaching their full potential, like I mentioned, and accessing curriculum. Just one little point of note, it's really important to note that in order to bring a student's file through this process all the way up to the multi-D level, parents are clearly an important part of that, and parental consent is required to access multi-D team supports in a school. Steph's going to talk now a little bit more specifically about who is involved at each layer of this multi-tiered system.
Thanks, Vicki. So as Vicki mentioned, most of the initial supports, the tier 1 supports, they happen with the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is the one who is with the student every day for 75-minute blocks, usually if you're in a semestered school. They are the ones who work directly with the students. So they're the ones who get to know the students' needs and strengths. They communicate and collaborate with the families. That's who you're going to have the most contact with. They apply best practices and differentiation, universal design to meet the needs of all of the students. They know and utilize the IEP to support student learning, and they are the ones who are going to seek the support of the LST or the learning support teacher or the multidisciplinary team if it's needed. The learning support teacher in a secondary school is a little bit different than elementary. They're the ones who are going to manage the educational and administrative needs for students. And in secondary, that means that they are the ones who are going to be writing the IEP and consulting with families around the IEP and then disseminating it to those classroom teachers. Because there are multiple teachers, they're the central person who does that work rather than trying to get 4 people to collaborate on one IEP, but there's input from all. They're also the ones who are going to arrange and sit in on the IPRC meetings, and they're going to be involved in any transfer of equipment from elementary to secondary, like SIA equipment, or if there are transition concerns that are being looked at, they're the ones who are going to support that happening. They monitor and support students in resource rooms, including support for accommodations like extra time or scribing. And they're the ones who are going to consult and assist classroom teachers if ever there are challenges that arise and we need some more input in order to make things work for that student. They work with administrators in order to organize where in-class support goes or what resource room support looks like. Other supports in the secondary system include educational assistants who may be involved in planning, organizing, and implementing of behavioral, social, or instructional programming. They're also going to be the ones who are assisting students with physical, medical, and safety needs in order to allow them access to the curriculum. The primary way that educational assistants are assigned is in order to meet physical, medical, and safety needs, and then they also provide other support while they're in the room meeting those needs. Secondary schools have guidance counselors that are going to help students in education, career, and personal. If there's personal challenges or crises that they're facing, they're the ones who are going to support students with that. They're going to assist with recommendations and referrals. They're part of the multidisciplinary team that's going to be involved if consent is given. And they are the ones that are going to help with some of that program plan and course selection. Student success teachers are in the schools and they may be involved if there are some time management, organization, or general support that is needed in order to help students who may be at risk at not getting credit. So they're primarily brought in when there's a risk of credit accumulation. They do credit rescue and credit recovery, and they support. But we all look at the student as a whole, and so there's lots of overlap. It's not like only EAs do this and guidance counselors. Everybody works together as a team in order to meet the needs of the students in the best way that they can. The broader team would involve the central team, and the central team has a variety of professional support staff, educational supports, and administrative supports. The main ones that get brought in most often and who often sit on the multidisciplinary team when discussions are happening are the psychologists, the social workers, speech language pathologists, behavior analysts, and occupational therapists. Vicki.
So what do you do when you're concerned about your child's learning in high school, or if you're concerned about even getting them into high school in the right program? The best place to start once you're there is with your child's teacher. In high school, this will be your child's course teacher. So in grade 9, students will have up to 8 credits per year, 8 courses, 8 teachers per year. Most schools will have a meet the teacher night early in the year or an open house. This is a great opportunity to start those conversations, to kind of begin that advocacy piece for your child. So definitely recommend that you do that. Parent-teacher interviews and other forms of communication. A lot of high school teachers do use Google Classroom as a platform, and they'll send a weekly update. So making sure that all of those communication pieces are in effect for your child, if those are tools that the teacher uses, email, other ways to get in touch with teachers. These are all important, and help just keep you up to date about progress and all those pieces. So for sure, teachers are the first layer of support for your child's needs. But as Steph just went through, there are other folks that are there as well. So really critical or integral, I would say, in high school are the learning support teachers, especially for our students who already have IEPs, but certainly if an IEP is developed, they are integral. And then also the guidance counselors at a school. So these are the really core folks that you connect with alongside the teacher. I mentioned the IEP, and we'll spend just a couple of minutes. We want to get to the chat as well and be able to answer some of your questions. So the IEP, many of you probably in the session already have an IEP, or your child already has an IEP, so you're familiar with that. But essentially, just a quick overview. It's a written plan that outlines the support strategies and interventions that a student needs to access curriculum. The purpose of an IEP, it helps school staff to understand a student's individual strengths and needs, and it lists the accommodations, which include instructional pieces, environment pieces, and assessment pieces that are essential to be in place for a student to access curriculum. It provides a plan for transitions, which will become, I think we already said it, but super important, both that transition into high school, as well as transition pieces throughout students' time in high school, and then eventually leading to outside of high school. So all of those components should be built into a transition plan in a high school IEP. And then ultimately what is super important to know as parents is that IEPs are working documents, and that you will be consulted early on in the process. The IEP is reviewed on a yearly basis. Parent consultation is an important part of that. But if at any point in the year you want to have a conversation about your child's IEP, that is something that can happen. Again, it might start with a question to the teacher, but it also might get shifted over to the learning support teacher, as that's the key person who develops the IEP in high school. Yeah, well, one thing to mention just before we pop over to that next slide, there is a subtle difference or not so subtle, but in high school, we tend to see far fewer, if any, modifications in IEPs. So instead that primarily IEPs in high school are accommodated IEPs, and modifications tend to happen through the pathways that students can access after grade 9 and 10. That's more where we see things, but we really work individually around what students' learning needs are. So just to mention that piece. Sorry, Steph, we can move on to the next slide.
So what can you do before the first day of school? What are just a few tips to get you through the beginning of this process? Go to the Welcome to High School night at your child's high school, meet and ask questions, visit the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board website to access a list of dates. Encourage your child to participate in visits and opportunities to connect with staff. That's how they're going to get to know people better. That's how they're going to become more comfortable, and it's how staff are going to get to know them. Review the child's IEP and the IEP transition plan in order to see what are the main things that you're concerned about, and have those conversations with the school staff. And if you have any concerns about what is this transition going to look like, check in with your child's LST in grade 8 and see what can be done or what is being done to help with that transition. Do some brainstorming together if possible, in order to take the steps necessary to have a great start on the first day of school when they hit grade 9. It's a big jump. We're going to go to the Q&A. I think we only have one question currently. If you have a question, you can pop it in quickly. The question is about some students that are in the board who have been online for a long time, and you're concerned about how do we access online learning moving forward. And I would say if you're in our board, I'm suspecting that they are at OCV currently, and I would continue to have dialogues with the OCV team to find out what the options are for next year, because at this moment, I don't have a clear indication that I can give you about what or is not going to be happening with OCV. And then at that point, you're going to be able to establish what the needs are, and if there is I know you're saying you're willing to move, or how you're going to access it. There are online courses, so you'll be able to then work with your homeschool team, whether that's OCD or not, in order to establish what might be the best next steps for you. Anything to add to that, Vicki?
No, I would say I agree with Steph. I'd say depending on where your child is at, it wasn't clear to me that this is a family that's currently in our board. But if you are within our board, definitely starting with the OCV support team, the learning support teacher that's there, having the conversation about what grade 9 can look like for your kids.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. You can head off to your last presentation for the evening. I hope you found something useful from our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Just a second, Vicki.
Sure.
I'm just going to turn off the recording. It's taking me a second.
Okay. I think I have it here, Steph. I can do it.